Hi, and welcome to Parashat Miketz. The question is asked, if the Torah is a blueprint to living our lives, why does God spend so many parashot on? It's just full of stories. There's only 3 halachic mitzvot in the whole of the chapters in Bereshit. And I think the answer is that in these beautiful stories, God is trying to show us the principles in which He runs the world. And one of those principles, as I read Miketz, is one of midah kineged midah. We see how Joseph enacts measure for the 5 things that were done to him by the brothers. For example, the brothers at the beginning spoke harshly to him when he came to see them in Dothan, and he now speaks harshly to them in Mitzrayim. They sent him dogs to see if the dogs he would be killed by the dogs. And here Yosef accuses them as spies, which has the possibility of the death sentence in a court. The third thing is that they threw him into a pit, and here we see Shimon being thrown into a pit. They sold him innocently as a slave, which is basically stealing a person. And here they were caught stealing the goblet to show them what it was like to be falsely accused of stealing. And finally, they caused grief to their father by showing him the tunic dipped in goat's blood. And here they have grief when they feel that the grief they're going to give to their father if Benjamin is not released. And so they're beautiful examples of midah kineged midah. But the question will be asked clearly, is this revenge? Is this Yosef taking revenge for what his brothers did? And the Alshech says absolutely no. The intent of Joseph is purely that of a father who loves his sons. He sees that the sons have gone, have done something wrong, and understands that there will be consequences in Olam Haba as a result of that sin. And instead of letting their souls feel the pain of Gehinnom from that sin, he's trying to fix it in this world. And how does he do that? By getting them to a situation where they will themselves do teshuvah. And the Alshech says that it's still very puzzling how Yosef treats the brothers. It oscillates from giving them tremendous fear to making them feel comfortable. We see that in many cases. For example, Joseph accuses the brothers of spying, which has the death penalty. And then he says, well, you can release yourself if you just bring Benjamin to show me that you're telling the truth. Then he throws him into prison, and he says, okay, you can be released, just Shimon will come out of prison. They found the money in their money bags, and then they return the money, and they have a lavish meal, and they feel all is well. And then finally they have the goblets found stolen in Benjamin's sack. And that really seals it for them. But why do we go from these extremes of fear and comfort? And I think the reason is that, it's interesting that, isn't it human nature that we only tend to do the self-accounting and looking inwards when we're under pressure, when we feel that something is being sent to us unjustly, and then we think, why is this? And let's think about why it's happening. And then the minute that pressure is gone, all of a sudden we stopped worrying about it. And I think this is what Yosef is trying to do, is putting the pressure, letting the pressure off, putting the pressure, letting the pressure off. And the purpose of this is the true teshuvah, the truest teshuvah, is when you still do the teshuvah, even when the pressure's off. And a perfect example of this back and forth is when the brothers came back and Levi finds the money in his sack, and the brothers were really, really frightened. But then when they came back home and they all found their money in their sack, they were just so-called afraid. How come they were so frightened when just Levi found it in his bag? And the Alshech said because they understood, but both Shimon and Levi were the most active in the sale of Yosef eventually into slavery. And Shimon was punished by being put into jail, as he was the older of the two. And Levi was punished by finding his money in his sack. And they thought, oh my God, that's clear sign that God is punishing us for selling Yosef as a slave. But when they came back home and they all found their money in their bag, they were only just a little bit scared. Why? And the Alshech says brilliantly that even Reuven found his money in his bag. If Reuven found money in his bag and he wasn't involved in selling Yosef as a slave, then clearly this whole incident, this is not a punishment from God because they sold him to slavery. It's a minor punishment, maybe because they didn't listen to his plead and they didn't show him mercy. Maybe that's why this is being punished. And as soon as Benjamin is returned, is shown to Yosef, then the whole matter is ended. And so we see that the minute the pressure is released, they self-justify again until we come to the goblet, when the goblet is found in Benjamin's sack. And it's just so emotionally charged what Judah says at that time. I'll read it to you. ויאמר יהודה, מה נאמר לאדוני? מה נדבר ומה נצטדק? האלוהים מצא את עוון עבדתך, והנני עבדים לאדוני, גם אנחנו וגם אשר נמצא הגביע בידו. Judah says, what can we say to my Lord? How can we speak? How can we justify ourselves? God has uncovered our sin, and here we are. We are ready to be slaves to your Lord, and we and both all of us and the one that the goblet was found in. And so we have the final statement of Teshuvah, and that is the purpose of bringing all of these incidents to manifest. The other main principle in life that we learn from this is how much energy it takes to hold on a facade, a lie. And we see that in the way that Yosef first encounters and interacts with the brothers when they come to Mitzrayim. He speaks to them harshly, and he accuses them of being spies. Why? Because they went through 10 different gates. And that's the clear signs of spies. And they say to him, "No, my lord, we're all the sons of one man, and we didn't want to have Ayn around on us, and so we came through 10 different gates." He said, "Well, then why did you end up in the red light district? You've come obviously to see the nakedness of our land." And then they are forced to say, no, we just came to look for our brother because, he was sold as a slave, and he's a very handsome man. We thought he'd be in the red light district, and that's why we were there. And that they had to say that because Yosef was saying, this is not the behavior of people who want to come and buy food. If they're so hungry, they come straight away and buy food. They don't mess around in the red light district. And so they were forced to say that. And then have you got another brother? And then they're forced to say, yeah, we have another brother. And Yosef is threatening to them, okay, one person go back and get the brother Benjamin, and I will interrogate him. Being the younger brother, he will be less resistant to my interrogation than you strong men. And as a result of that, the brothers did not move. That's why Yosef put them in jail for 3 days. And then Yosef said, okay, you know what? I'll just keep Shimon here, one of you here, Shimon, and the rest of you will go back and you bring the brother, and I won't interrogate him. The mere fact that the brother will look like you and be as handsome as you, then I will take it that you are not lying, and that's it. And so even when they come back to Jacob, they have to explain why they want to bring Benjamin. And it's very difficult for the brothers because they don't want to tell Yaakov the full picture. Because if Yaakov understood the real danger that they were in, he would never send Benjamin. But on the other hand, if they didn't tell them that there was a danger, then why would you want to bring Benjamin with you to that danger? So we see there's so much work that has to be done to keep the cover up. And so it's a much easier way of life just to be true. Be true to yourself, be true to the world. Just be your natural self and don't try to create a facade that you are that's going to cost a lot of energy to maintain. The third and important principle in the parasha is to what extent are we expected to do our own hishtadlut, our own effort to create something compared to believing in God and letting Him run the show. This parasha is all about dreams. Don't we all dream? Don't we all have big dreams? And if you're going to dream, why not dream big? The question is, why is it that sometimes our dreams aren't fulfilled, and other times they are? And I think the big lesson for us is the way in which Joseph held on to that vision of his dream. Don't forget, he was in jail or at least in Mitzrayim, for 13 years before he became the viceroy. And in that time, most of the time he was in jail. In 12 years he was in jail. And he had to keep those dreams alive right through that period. And the principle is like this. If you have a dream, you have a will to do something. And yet, the reality of life shows you it's completely different. How do you hold on to that dream? You have to somehow develop the ability to look past the realities, to look at them as illusionary, because what's really real is the dream. And when you have that perspective, you get there. But also, how is it that sometimes we dream small and sometimes we dream big? I once coined a phrase that says, don't let your reality interfere with your creativity. And I think that sums it up for me. But how can we dream big? And I think the key to that is that, again, we learn from Yosef that he always attributed his success to God. The extent to which we take credit for our success, we leave less space for Hashem to come in and do his magic. One of the principles that I discovered reading this Miketz this year is the principle of measure for measure, midah keneged midah. And the idea is like this, that whatever energy you bring out into the world, expect it to boomerang back to you. For example, if you give a bracha, a blessing to somebody, that blessing will come back to you. If you, God forbid, curse a person, that curse will, God forbid, come back to you. And if you judge somebody, the way you judge that person is the way that God is going to judge you. The lesson from here is to always do your hishtadlut to make your dreams come true, but only attribute a tiny proportion, 1-2% of its success when it is successful to you and your influence, and attribute the rest to God. And that way, when God is your partner, full partner, it's amazing what miracles can happen. And I want to just share with you a miracle that happened to me, because some 3 years ago, I asked my mentor, Yoel Turjuman, half jokingly, my mother's yortzeit's coming up, I told him, and in Shavuot, and would you mind writing a book that I can dedicate to her yortzeit? Because up until then, I'd taken many people to see Yoel and loved the wisdom that came out in those discussions. And I wanted wish that I could just capture that wisdom into a book and then share it with the world, because there's, you can only meet one person at a time. But when you have a book, you can share it with thousands, tens of thousands of people. So he wrote a book with his son-in-law, Chaim Yehuda, and we miraculously printed it at home the night before the yortzeit, and we distributed it to all our friends that came and family that came. But it then took 3 years of very hard work to manifest this book into a proper book. And I'm delighted to say that last night we launched the book, here in Israel, and it's called The Gesher. This is one of 5 sets of books that will be issued. And this is, by the way, one of Yoel's paintings. It's called The Fountain of Life, Fountain of Youth. And it's a beautiful example of how art and wisdom are brought together in one book. And I'm delighted to say that my wife Yocheved is going to be translating this book into English. And so if anybody wants a copy of this book, it's all about how to live a joyful and healthy life. And it has full of wisdom of Kabbalah, of Chassidut, of all our rich Jewish heritage into a book that anyone can pick up, layman or very advanced reader, and find it really inspiring and meaningful. So this is a dream come true for me, and I'm just so happy that I was able to play a small part in its development. And I just want to leave you with a bracha that whatever your dreams are, however unlikely they might be, just hold on to them, because that's the real reality, and just forge your way through to making it your actual reality. This week I'm delighted to be joined by Rav Shaul Leiter, who is the founder of Ascent, a magnificent organization here in Tzfat, who hosts thousands of people, tens of thousands of people visiting Tzfat for a spiritual experience every year. And I'm delighted to be talking through a lot of the concepts that we picked up on this podcast. That will be Tuesday at 7 o'clock. Look forward to seeing you then. In the meantime, dream big. God bless.